Let go. Not because you failed, but because holding on is what's exhausting you. What if your life feels heavy not because you're doing too little, but because you're trying to control everything? You were taught that letting go is dangerous. That relaxing means losing. That if you stop pushing, everything will fall apart. But think carefully. The moments that truly changed your life, did they happen when you were forcing, or when you finally let go? Today, you'll discover a quiet truth known by ancient thinkers and spiritual traditions. When you stop forcing life, life begins to move with you. Stay with me, this shift changes everything. Imagine for a moment that the biggest mistake of your life was not trying too little, but trying too hard. From an early age, you were taught that you must always be striving, controlling every detail, anticipating every outcome, pleasing the right people, avoiding mistakes, avoiding judgment, avoiding failure. You were taught that relaxing is dangerous, that letting go is weakness, that stopping the effort means giving up. But what if this logic is reversed? What if the reason so many things don't flow in your life is not a lack of effort, but an excess of control? Think about your daily life for a moment. How many hours do you spend replaying conversations in your mind? How many times do you check your phone, anxious about a response? How many nights have you lost sleep trying to solve problems that haven't even happened yet? This is the invisible cage we build around ourselves. We call it responsibility. We call it being prepared. We call it caring. But underneath, it's fear wearing a mask of productivity. Today, we are going to explore an ancient, uncomfortable, yet liberating paradox. The less you try to force life, the more it begins to cooperate with you. Michel de Montaigne, a 16th century thinker, discovered this in the middle of chaos. While France was torn apart by religious wars, political collapse, and personal loss, he did something few dare to do. He stopped. Not to escape life, but to observe it without illusion. Retreated into his tower, surrounded by books and silence, Montaigne began to study what most people avoid facing: human fragility, the instability of the mind, and the illusion of control. He realized something unsettling. Most of our suffering does not come from what actually happens, but from our desperate attempt to prevent what might happen. He wrote, "My life has been full of terrible misfortunes, most of which never happened." Pause here. Read that again. Most of which never happened. How many of your worries ever became real? How many conversations did you rehearse that never took place? How many catastrophic futures did your mind create that never arrived? Montaigne kept detailed records of his anxieties. He noticed a pattern that would change his entire philosophy. For every 10 things he worried about, perhaps one actually occurred. And of that one thing that did happen, it rarely unfolded the way he imagined. The accident he feared on the road didn't happen. The criticism he anticipated never came. The financial ruin he obsessed over resolved itself through circumstances he never could have predicted. He realized that worry is not preparation. It is suffering twice, once in imagination, and once in reality, if it even happens at all. And here's what's even more striking. The things that truly challenged him in life were almost always events he hadn't worried about at all. They came from directions he never anticipated, which meant all that worry had been utterly useless as protection. This led him to a profound question: if worrying doesn't prevent bad things, and if most worried about things never happen, then what exactly is worry accomplishing? The answer is nothing. Except stealing your peace. Except exhausting your nervous system. Except keeping you from being fully present in the only moment that actually exists, this one. Constantly trying to control everything does not bring safety. It brings exhaustion. The Bible echoes this truth in a surprisingly direct way. In the book of Matthew, it says, "Which of you by worrying can add a single hour to your life?" It is a simple question, and a devastating one. Worry does not extend life. Control does not guarantee peace. Anxiety does not prevent the future. And yet, we persist. We try to control what others think. We try to control how we are perceived. We try to control outcomes that depend on countless invisible variables. And in doing so, we lose something essential: presence. There's a deeper layer to this biblical wisdom that often gets overlooked. When Scripture talks about worry, it's not just giving practical advice. It's revealing something about the nature of reality itself. The same chapter in Matthew continues, "Look at the birds of the air. They do not sow or reap or store away in barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not much more valuable than they?" This is not an instruction to be irresponsible. Birds still build nests. They still search for food. They still care for their young. The point is different. The point is about trust versus control. Birds act without anxiety. They respond to what is, not to what might be. They don't hoard beyond their needs out of fear of tomorrow. And somehow, across millions of years of evolution, across countless generations, they continue. The universe has a way of providing what's needed when it's needed, but only when we're present enough to recognize and receive it. When you're consumed with controlling tomorrow, you miss the opportunities available today. When you're paralyzed by fear of what might go wrong, you can't see what's going right. This is why control is actually the opposite of faith. Control says, "It all depends on me, and I must figure it out." Faith says, "I will do my part, and trust that I'm not alone in this." One leads to exhaustion. The other leads to flow. Montaigne nearly died in a riding accident. For a brief moment, he lost consciousness and believed he was dying. When he survived, something shifted forever. He realized that no amount of planning, vigilance, or mental control could have prevented that accident. Life happens despite control. That experience led him to a radical conclusion. Living is not about mastering existence. Living is about consenting to it. The Bible expresses this same idea in different words. Commit your way to the Lord, trust in Him, and He will act. Surrender is not passivity. It is letting go of the illusion that everything depends on you. And here is the central point of this video. There is a crucial difference between acting and forcing. Action comes from presence. Forcing comes from fear. Action is born from clarity. Forcing is born from anxiety. The more you try to control, the more tense you become. And the more tense you become, the less clearly you see. Let me illustrate this difference with something you've probably experienced. Think about a time when you tried to force a conversation with someone. Maybe you needed to convince them of something. Maybe you wanted to fix a misunderstanding. Maybe you were trying to make them see your perspective. The more you pushed, the more they resisted. The more you explained, the less they understood. The more desperate you became, the more distant they grew. Now think about a time when you simply spoke your truth and let it be. No convincing. No controlling their reaction. No attachment to the outcome. What happened? Often, when we stop forcing, people actually start listening. When we stop needing them to agree, they become curious about our perspective. When we release control, space opens for genuine connection. This same principle applies to everything. Forcing yourself to sleep makes insomnia worse. Forcing creativity produces nothing but frustration. Forcing love creates resentment. Forcing healing prolongs suffering. There are certain things in life that only happen when you stop trying to make them happen. The Taoist tradition has a name for this, Wu Wei. It translates roughly as effortless action or non-forcing. It doesn't mean doing nothing. It means acting in harmony with the natural flow of things rather than against it. A river doesn't force its way to the ocean. It follows the path of least resistance, and yet it always arrives. What if you lived like that? Not passive, but responsive. Not controlling, but aware. Not forcing, but flowing. There is an invisible force guiding many of our decisions, the desire for approval. We want to be accepted. We want to be admired. We want to belong. And without noticing, we begin shaping our identity to please others. Montaigne saw this mechanism with surgical precision. He did not write to convince. He did not write to impress. He wrote to understand himself. And that is why his words still resonate centuries later. He understood that those who live to please lose contact with their own center. And when you lose your center, you become a prisoner of other people's opinions. The Bible warns of this clearly. Fear of man is a trap. When you live to please, you live in tension. When you live in tension, you force. And when you force, life resists. Detachment, as Montaigne taught, is not indifference. It is clarity. It is knowing what deserves your energy and what only drains your peace. He observed that people suffer not because they desire too much, but because they cling too tightly to outcomes. They want guarantees. They want certainty. They want to eliminate uncertainty. But life does not work that way. The book of Proverbs says, "The heart of man plans his way, but the answer comes from the Lord." You may plan, but you cannot command the flow. And here emerges the great paradox. When you release obsession with results, you become more effective. How many times did something work out only after you stopped insisting? Stopped explaining yourself? Stopped trying to convince? There is a quiet magnetism in those who do not beg for validation, who do not need to prove anything, who act without desperation. Montaigne called this living in accordance with one's nature. The Bible calls it meekness, not as weakness, but as strength under control. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. The meek are not passive. They simply do not fight reality. In human relationships, this truth becomes even clearer. The more you try to hold on to someone, the more they pull away. The more you try to shape, correct, or control, the more resistance you create. Montaigne experienced a rare friendship, free of possession, free of demand. And he realized that true love does not imprison, it allows. The Bible confirms this. Love is not possessive, it does not demand, it does not control. When you stop trying to control others, something unexpected happens. Relationships become lighter, more honest, more freely chosen. Consider how this plays out in the most common relationships of life. In parenting, the parents who try to control every aspect of their children's lives often raise adults who either rebel completely or never develop their own identity. But the parents who provide guidance without domination, who set boundaries without suffocation, who allow their children to make mistakes and learn, these parents often raise confident, capable adults. In romantic relationships, the partner who constantly needs reassurance, who checks phones, who demands constant attention, who tries to mold the other person, this partner creates the very distance they fear. But the partner who loves freely, who trusts without naivety, who gives space while staying present, this partner often experiences the deepest intimacy. In friendships, those who cling and demand often find themselves alone. Those who allow friends to come and go naturally, without guilt or manipulation, often maintain lifelong bonds. The pattern is always the same: control creates distance. Freedom creates connection. This doesn't mean having no standards. It doesn't mean accepting disrespect or poor treatment. It means understanding that you cannot change another person. You can only love them or not. Accept them or not. Stay or not. But you cannot control them. And every attempt to do so damages what you're trying to protect. And then we reach the most delicate moment. The moment when you finally let go. Not because you gave up, but because you grew tired of fighting what cannot be controlled. This moment is not weakness. It is maturity. It is the realization that you do not need to carry the world on your shoulders. That you do not need to prove your worth. That you do not need to control every variable of existence. Montaigne lived this. The Bible teaches this. Life confirms this. The less you try to force things, the more space you create for them to happen. When you stop caring about what doesn't matter, what truly matters begins to grow. When you release control, clarity appears. When you abandon the need to please, authenticity emerges. And when you accept the imperfection of life, peace arrives. Perhaps the question is no longer, what do I need to do to make things work? But instead, what do I need to stop forcing? What are you holding onto so tightly that it is already hurting you? What relationship are you trying to control instead of simply loving? What outcome are you obsessing over instead of focusing on the present action? What version of yourself are you performing instead of simply being? If you let go, you may discover that life always knew the way. Here's a practice you can begin today. For the next 24 hours, notice when you're forcing. Notice when your jaw clenches as you try to control a situation. Notice when you rehearse conversations that haven't happened yet. Notice when you check your phone compulsively, trying to control someone's response time. Notice when you lie awake at night trying to solve tomorrow's problems. Just notice. Don't judge yourself. Don't try to stop it. Just become aware. Because awareness is the first step toward freedom. And then, when you catch yourself forcing, try this. Take a breath. Relax your shoulders. and ask yourself, what would happen if I let go right now? Not giving up. Not being irresponsible. Just releasing the grip of control and trusting that you'll know what to do when the time comes. You might be surprised by what happens. The conversation you stopped rehearsing goes better because you're actually present. The person you stopped trying to control starts opening up naturally. The solution you stopped forcing suddenly appears when your mind relaxes. This is not magic. This is how life works when we stop getting in our own way. Remember, you are not responsible for controlling the universe. You are responsible for showing up, doing your part, and trusting the process. The rest will take care of itself. It always has. It always will. If this video resonated with you, share in the comments, what do you feel you are trying to control too much? By speaking it, you don't just free yourself, you help others let go as well. And if this message touched you, consider sharing it with someone who needs to hear it. Sometimes, the most powerful thing we can do for someone is remind them. They don't have to carry it all. They don't have to figure it all out. They just have to show up, do what they can, and trust. Let go. Not because you failed, but because you're finally ready to flow. Thank you for being here. Until next time.